before. I lost that love before. I lost that love before.
Alright. Cubeheads, Tyler,
Hello.
episode 3. What's going on, man?
Hey, dude.
How are you?
I'm great. Coming off a big weekend of cubing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just in Baltimore.
You've had an awesome East Coast trip as far as like, I mean, it's a little selfish to include myself, but 48 hours. Really, anytime you get to hang in Baltimore with those guys is like,
It really is.
Yeah.
They made me feel very welcome. No Land Beyond, awesome gaming store in Baltimore. Have to recommend that place.
yeah.
Not only were there 22 people cubing, but there were multiple one-shot RPGs being ran. Other people were playing games. There were so many people there that people would walk into the room and Andy would be like, "Are you here for cube? No? Okay."
Yeah.
Or they were, and we would cube.
Yeah. No, it's it's truly exceptional what they've done with the scene down there, and you know the fact that No Land Beyond store kind of came from their play group.
Yep.
And that's like their second location, and it's it's just so it's awesome to see.
Yeah, we dream of adults of our friends getting very successful and our friends being successful enough to run a game store that they host us at and have drinks is truly a dream I think we can all relate to. And they really not only made me feel welcome, but my cube as well. I showed off the list and full 8 people drafted it. I got some good feedback and really happy with it.
Yeah.
They had a great time.
So you are you're an East Coast native but a West Coast dude. So how from the Philly area?
Yep.
Okay.
Grew up outside of Philadelphia.
All right. What do you count? Mainline?
Yeah,
East,
I would say mainline.
We're in the suburbs of Philadelphia right now, as we're sitting right now, in Wilmington. So from media area.
Newtown Square, media,
Yeah.
Broomall, right around there, very close to actually where Andy grew up. My mom still lives there, so I'm on a trip with my partner down here and took some time to cube in Baltimore and take the train to visit you.
Yeah.
I'm really thankful that you have me here.
I'm excited, and it's always I think when you hit me up, I was flattered first of all, and I was like, oh, dude, this would be a perfect opportunity just to sit down and chop it up, and I'm very excited because we're going to get to play one of your cubes, the Jun Cube at CubeCon.
At CubeCon, it was a main event selection. So.
Main event selection,
Yep.
so it's cool to get to talk to you about that and your journey and so starting from the beginning, when did you first discover Magic, and then how did you, I guess, talk me through being introduced to Magic, and then from that point, where was the twists and turns to finding Cube?
Sure.
Yeah.
So long answer to your
it's a long
question.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah.
So the year was 1996, and my family is doing ski trips.
Okay.
And my aunt was always really nerdy. Got my grandfather as a dungeon master for a play group in the 80s, and we were bored on a family trip. And she was like, "Hey, let's go to the store, find a game to play."
Yeah.
We go to the store, and she sees something, big box, just big green hulking org on the cover of it. The 96 starter kit. Brought that home.
Is that Force of Nature?
No, it was the star, the org, just a 6/6 for a set.
Oh, okay.
Just very vanilla, very iconic art.
Yeah.
And my Aunt Renee knew how to play, but she was very whimsical about it as, I was about 8 years old, and Creatures with Flying had What Flies.
Yeah.
And she knew that Prodigal Sorcerer was called Tin, which I think is really OG.
Yeah.
And we played a bit, but I'm an only child. I didn't really have anyone to play with other than my mom, who as an adult knew card games a lot better than me. And she knew around the invasion time that a card called Armadillo Cloak was really good.
It was really good.
Kicked my ass upside down and backwards. And that kind of soured me. I didn't have anyone at my level to play with.
Mm-hmm.
I went to college in upstate New York and got into a theater group, and they would play in between rounds. Shout out to my friend Nate Rotuno, because he would have these boxes of decks and he goaded me into picking them up because I was kind of sassy about it. I played Magic, and fell into a really great crowd with the East Coast up there. And we would play all the time. So many great people got me more into like pre-releases and stuff. So that was around Shards of Alara. Got into playing Conflux. And in school in upstate New York, I was playing, and eventually I moved in with a guy, Corey, who played Lands and Legacy. There's a big Legacy scene in upstate New York. And we wanted to build a cube. And there was a time in my life where Corey was not as internet adept as, a lot of people are. And when I would pay rent, we would go to the Star City Games website and we would find however much my rent was in foils. And I would buy those and we built a cube together. And that was a really wholesome time. And we learned about Cube because one of the older players there had a crap box, just crap rares. And he was like, this is a cube. And we just knew it as battle box or crap box, And from there, this idea of like, wait, we could have a sort of shared community environment that we could all sort of buy into, play cards, show up whenever. I think the foils got a little out of hand in terms of being able to share the thing, but it was really great. It was nice to have that community thing that we could all lean into. And that's kind of how I learned about Cube, because at that time, like, Commanders, Elder Dragon, Highlander, we were just looking for different ways to play.
So what year is that around? Is that like...
I would say that was about 2011, 2010 maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is,
We had heard about it, but the idea where Cube is now was totally different, right? It was like just the 360 best cards you could do, but it was really cool to hear about cards like Fire Imp or Fire Ambush, like these old cards that were good in just Cube. That were almost mythical, right? Like you hadn't heard about them, but they were really good in this one environment.
Oh yeah, our good friend from the Philly Magic scene who had the first cube in our play group, this guy Mark Taco, he had a powered cube, and it was just like, that was when the cubes were just like the best cards in Magic. And I remember being enamored by Booster Tutor and Who, What, When, Where, Why.
Oh yeah.
Because like they were just like, I knew what unhinged or unglued was because of the lands, but I just remember being enamored that this isn't like the funny card that you like arm wrestle someone. These are actually like, I thought it was novel that like they were actually playable Magic cards, but they were in the joke set. But then cubing let you use them in like the real, like in the context of the game, and for me like, that was like one of the early things that drew me to Cube. Was like, oh, like we could use those cards. That's cool. And then like used like in the ones that were more reasonable, because Taco was like very much about like balance. And I feel like Booster. Well, we could have a whole episode about Booster.
You really could.
I'm not for the record. I'm not a fan of Booster Tutor because it takes too long. But I am a fan of Booster Tutor for the flavor. Is it right for cubes? I don't know. It's your choice. That's my 2 cents on this.
What do you think? Just sorry to go down.
No, we can go down the path.
With a pack of outside Magic cards, and you sleeve them up and put them in. So you Booster Tutor, right?
But you buy a booster.
Yeah.
Okay. I almost think that, which this it kind of warps it and creates its own meta, but I almost think like having a predetermined Booster Tutor pack, for me, because my biggest beef is the time. Is that like if it's on hand and you have the tutor and you're like, okay, like this is what I'm like, then I'm okay with it, but like it's just like the whole what you just suggested almost like made me like twitch a little bit, because I'm like, you want to go buy a pack and then sleeve the fucking pack and then make the choice. It's like, what are we doing here? We can't, but that's super fun. And I also acknowledge that, like, for all the things that like I try in my older years, for all the things that I really love in life, not only in Magic but in life, I try to be like, okay, but like let's think about the things that other people might love, and that's the thing. Like other people might be like, oh my god, I get to cast Booster Tutor and it's Tuesday night at the LGS at the local Cube night, and I get to go like find a pack to buy. Like, and that's like, that'd be cool. That's super cool.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. I think in a lot of things in life, you should just like know your side of the argument, know the fallacies with it, and then just like pick your side and be willing to be wrong, and be willing to be right. And I don't know, just like I think like you could convince me that Booster Tutor's right, but in the end, I think for the way that I like to play, I think it's a miss for me.
Right.
But there are times I've had fun with and also because it's something that can be implemented in so many different ways. You could convince me that an extra time Booster Tutor would be like really cool if you had like, we all knew like if you get the Booster Tutor, you do like a wheel, or like something like there's like something, I don't know, like you could find a way to make it entertaining. I think, I don't know, but I think it's like I said. What are your thoughts about Booster Tutor?
My thoughts about Booster Tutor are similar to what you're saying. I think on the timeline of card design, they got it right with the card from Conspiracy that adds another pack, the Lore Seeker. I think that's kind of the good balance of it, because then there's also Summon the Pack, Gather the Pack, the one big black instant that just puts all the creatures into play, and that just wins games.
Yeah.
It doesn't take that long to resolve, but it just invalidates everything that goes on before the game.
Yep.
I think it's got enough of a hook that it's an interesting concept, Booster Tutor, but I think it gets old.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of those cards that one person has a lot more fun
and that's
than other people.
I think that hits the nail on the head, honestly, is that like it's run its course with me, and I'm just like, really, we're doing the Booster Tutor thing. Like, would it be better if you just searched your deck? Can I just give you a Demonic Tutor instead?
Yeah.
Like, just don't make me wait for this. Like,
the Worldly Tutor, the Sylvan Tutor, or whatever.
Yeah, I would like, don't make me get like salty that like, it just so happens that like the Tendrils wasn't in the deck, or like or the draft or something. Like, so walk me through what your journey was from Cube to like pursuing Cube from outside your local area to showing up at the first CubeCon. Like, how did that?
I'm gonna go back, and this is gonna be a bit of a tangent, but it got started when we were in Rochester and we were getting kind of bored of this, and someone suggested a Boo draft. Not sure if you're familiar with a Boo draft, a build our own. So you get 8 people together, like you would for a cube, except it's a longer process, sort of like rotisserie, but one person designs 45 cards. And someone else designs 45 cards. And at the end of it, you have 45 custom cards. And we wanted to do this for an event with a whole bunch of us, and it got me sort of practiced with making custom cards. And I started with Shards of Alara. And this was before New Capenna. I also love Concept Tarkir, and I love multicolor sets. So I was like, okay, what if I made a cube that's a third Shards of Alara, a third Concept Tarkir, and a third of cards that finish the cycles in between them, right? Like there's enemy color cascade cards. This was before Triumphs existed, right? The Banner Saga, So I just made that, and people enjoyed that. There were obviously some cards that were not good, that were really oppressive and not fun. But it got me excited for Cube, and I realized that there was a big draw in our community for Cube. And when I was running another event, a friend of mine knew Jonathan Brostov. And he invited him to a digital event we were running that was online during 2021, during the COVID pandemic. And he was super excited, and he told us, like, this thing is happening. CubeCon is happening. And I was like, that sounds really cool.
Shout out to J Bro.
Shout out to J Bro.
Cube.
Hachi-machi. Inspectors. And that just got us super excited about it. And the idea that we had been to GPs and other events, and one of the reasons I started running and getting those people together was this idea that, look, we're all adults. We don't need to go to a convention hall somewhere that none of us picked the location of. Let's all get together and do a thing we wanted to do. And CubeCon really captures that spirit that helps empower people to build across the community, because you can't just cube alone. We could, but like, you really want as many people as there are to cube. And it just seemed really great, and it inspired all of us to go. It was central to our play group. I had friends who live on the East Coast and the South, and a bunch of us came together, once we knew it was happening, got people together. It was a little bit harder to coordinate logistics for everyone. And what we did last year, what we're doing this year is everyone goes to Chicago, get a rental car, drive from Chicago to Madison.
Yeah.
So that's how we got
Fair
to
enough.
CubeCon. And it was incredible. I mean, they really found the balance of structure for people. It's amazing how many drafts fired on time. The community of it was great, and people really bought it, and I think you can feel the excitement for it this year.
So how did you do in the main event?
14 and 19. Okay. As someone who normally feels like they play seriously and wants to win all the time, I had never had more fun losing. And at the end of the event, when I tracked up my event over, we cubed Thursday, we played the Devoid Cube, Friday, main event, Saturday, Sunday, and then my friend and I, we were up till 3 a.m. with Bones drafting at the game store in Madison, the Gamers Library. Shout out to Nicole Dubin. We were drafting way into the morning, and I looked at my record, and I never had more fun losing. So not super great, but I don't care. I'm just there to have fun in Cube.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think wacky stuff happens in Commander for sure, but like, it's hard pressed to like not have, like, just like, you're playing peak Magic when you're having fun losing.
Yes.
That's also minor shout out to Braden and Benny's. Like, I had so much fun losing playing Benny's in Baltimore.
Yeah.
But I was playing Storm. So I do love me.
Without Soul Rings, right?
No Soul Rings.
No rules.
Two Benny's tournaments, no Soul Rings. Just saying. I am not a good Magic player. But man, I love this game so much.
Yeah.
So the first CubeCon, I'm like, I have obviously as much of just so jealous that I was not there, and I hadn't kind of reestablished my relationship with the larger Magic community at that point in time. But I'm very excited for this year. So leaving that event, then you're inspired with like the spirit of Cube. So then tell me like how you go from CubeCon then to now having a cube that is in the main event, and one that I think people are pretty excited for. So
yeah, I think that of the cubes that they have to make a wide group, right? It's not 48 vintage cubes, it's not 48 peasants cubes. There's a wide variety. And when I looked at the cubes, what stood out to me was that there was a lot of cubes with restrictions. And I remember my friends coming up to me during the event being like, "Oh man, I drafted the Sultai cube, I played Flash, I played something." And on the car back to Chicago, I was like, man, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna build a cube, right? I got time on my hands, I got the spark and this energy. And I started with a thought, like, what format or like set of interactions do I feel like I know so well I could make a format around it?
Yeah.
And I love gold cards. I started with Shards of Alara. I played Shards Standard. I played Modern Juns, with throughout all the bannings of Deathrite, Bloodbraid Elf, and Bloodbraid Elf getting unbanned, and I was like, some of the peak most interesting Magic I've played were Jund Mirrors, where you have very similar cards. These one or two different haymakers can make a difference. Your mana matters a lot. Your threats your opponents have a lot. And even though it's not a control mirror, there's a lot of interesting decisions about how do you use your mana, what threats matter, do you kill your opponent's Dark Confidant when they're at 4, do you let them flip, do you play Huntmaster or not? There were so many interesting choices, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to make a cube that captures the spirit of that. And I started talking with my friends in the car. They were very helpful. One of them's a big mono red player, one of them's a big mono black player, and we just all sort of pulled together, and they really rallied behind me and helped me flesh out the start of it, which was I think Yawgmoth, Lightning Bolt, and Tarmogoyf were like, that's how we're starting.
Fair enough.
Once I had the shell of that, I realized some power level bands, right? And it's going to have dual lands, and it's going to have some multiple, some singleton breaking, as a homage to the modern Jund, and that has gone through some changes, but I really try to pare it down to interesting creatures, good, cheap interaction, big haymakers, and giving you the freedom to go play around. But if you're playing a graveyard deck and don't have a strategy for some of the hate bears, you're going to feel like you don't have anything to do.
Yep.
If you play a mid-range deck but can't go bigger than the other person, you're going to get ground out in a long game.
Yeah.
So I think it's really come together.
So before we go in depth, before I ask you direct questions about the cube, I don't want to say in depth because I am nowhere near smart enough to go in depth on a cube in the way that some of the cube audience would like. But going back to the cube kind of being grounded in your love for Alarm, because I also have a strong love for that block. Like, so Jund was obviously your favorite shard, right? What was your least favorite shard of the block?
I think my least favorite shard of the block was Grixis.
Okay.
I have to say.
Okay.
I thought
so I have like a 4 foot tall painting of Nicol Bolas in my house. So we'll have to talk.
Nicol Bolas is a shard into his own, right? Like he's just wearing the Grixis crown.
Fair enough.
It probably was because my first draft I ever did.
Yeah.
I opened a Crash the Bloodbraided and a foil Hellkite Overlord, and lost to a guy who just had 4 Keter Creepers, which is a 2/3 with Death Touch and Old School Menace.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing. And it's a little bit from that, but I think it's mostly that the unearth mechanic, I think, didn't quite hit for me.
Yeah. But you hadn't discovered Sundial of the Infinite.
No.
That's fun stuff.
I think Esper gets a bad rap about it for being so parasitic in the mechanics, but man, Tower Gargoyle.
Yeah. I think Naya was my favorite. And I think I like Naya just because I think Jund was just so good. And I was like, God, I can't wait. Buggy man. But Jund certainly got humbled over its and I think you actually do a pretty thoughtful job you do a very thoughtful job in your Cube Cobra description, but you also kind of have like a small write-up on the homage, like the history of Jund and like kind of how, and I think that's it's great for context for people that didn't kind of like. For me, I was like, that was like my F&Ms in college, and that was like the formative. So like it's all like very visceral, but like people, I couldn't tell you what the hell the Strixhaven standard meta was like. Right? I don't know. I have no idea. So I think it's that's really cool. But to the actual cube. How do you go about picking the non-basic lands for your Jund cube, and like what are the things in that? Like what do you think what are you trying to achieve with your the
suite of non-basics? Yeah, I think that's a really good place to start, because that's certainly one of the places where I started, where I was like, I want to have dual lands. The OG dual lands, it's important that when you start with your mana base or think about the experiences you want people to have in your cube, one of my greatest joys was being able to play with dual lands. Yeah. And I think knowing that I wanted to bring that experience at power level where it's not about Moxen and it's not about non-basic land hate. I want the non-basic lands to stand out, and you can't really, the 5-color good stuff is just junk mid-range. So there's no danger of someone playing all the best cards. Like, go for it, play the best cards with the mana. Field of the Dead is actually a supported archetype, so that really works. But I wanted dual lands, fetch lands, and shock lands. And I came around to the idea of building the man lands in there because Raging Ravine was so important. Hissing Quagmire. It is what it is, but building specifically 2-color mana bases, and I really get a kick out of, I have a Zeator's Proving Ground that just has a label on it that says Jund Triumph. So I don't have a Zeator's Proving Ground in I have a Jund Triumph, but...
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So where do you then, so like Jund is, in my head, is Bloodbraided and Blightning. Yeah. That's like, to me, that's what Jund is. So I think of Jund as very effective 2-for-1s that require a lot of thought because you don't necessarily generate card advantage in card draw. So if you're not extremely effective with the way that you play the game, you're punished very hard because you can't replenish and make another decision fast. You have to be confident in your plan A the first time, because if you don't get your 2-for-1s right, or if you make the more inefficient decision, then it's not just as like the inherent benefit when you're playing like a card advantage deck in the purest sense, where you're drawing more than your opponent, right? You just have more resources, right? But in Jund, I feel like it was interesting in the grindy mid-range deck too. They get a bad rap, I think, but I think they're wildly hard to play correctly because you don't have an inherent flow of resources coming in, so you use them. They have to be more like razor precise,
surgical.
Yeah. And I'm asking this. I'm coming at this because I haven't played your cube. I just read the list. I read the description. We've talked about it. So I'm wondering, like, how do you lean into that, or at least that view of Jund, and then how do you have things in there that support like the opposite of that? Like, talk to me, and then I guess, like, how does that lead into like what you're trying to accomplish with your own types?
So backing up to answer your question, I think you have to start with what is Jund, because unfortunately I get this question a lot. As someone who is more entrenched in Magic, when I bring it to a local shop in California, some of the players don't know what Jund is. And fortunately for those young, innocent people, they will get Junded out. And what that is, you're talking about this punishing, card advantage, and it's the idea that you are playing a cage match, right? You are going to get up in the ground, you're going to offset your opponent, you're going to try to pin them on the ground and slowly, get them out of resources. And that's really difficult to do if you've never done it before or had that sort of done to you. We've all played a game and our opponent has surgically dismantled us and we've just left being like, what has happened? And where Jund gets that is a combination of hand disruption, creature removal, resilient threats, and pressure, right? Just inevitability in the first 4 to 5 turns. You're trying to set up a sweep of your opponent to knock them off balance, push them down on the ground, and try to keep them there before they can get up or get around. And this started, there's the famous like Thoughtseize, Dark Confidant, Liliana of the Veil, Bloodbraid Elf into something else, and you lose, right? And where that really comes from is a push in design to make creatures matter, make removal spells that interact with those creatures, and planeswalkers that try to play a, quote, sandblack small game of Magic. Liliana of the Veil, Groot Wildspeaker isn't really a small game of Magic, but gives you some sort of oomph. You're trying to end the game by a Broodmate Dragon at the very, biggest. And when I thought about this cube, I kind of started there. It's like, I want Thoughtseize to be playable, and I want Broodmate Dragon to be playable. And I went through a lot of iterations. My play group let me know that maybe playing, against multiple X-Spell burn isn't really that fun. During the first iteration, and when someone drafted it, one player had a Thragtusk under a Mimic that and lost the game and came up to me afterwards and was like, this should not happen. I should win this game. Because there was just too much burn. And it's really helpful because through this design...
I don't think that's a problem. Just putting my own personal feelings out there, but go ahead.
I think, to just reflect back on your question, I thought I knew how to build a cube. I thought my first draft would be really good. I came in with a lot of nativity. I was like, lots of multicolor cards, really good finishers, and stuff in between what happens. And I've had to learn a lot, actually, in cube design and had some really good feedback, like archetypes matter, giving signposts to players, reducing the cards that give bad experiences. And I think the hardest cut I've had to make is Yawgmoth, Thran Physician. Because in a world without counterspell and many wrath effects, Yawgmoth is basically tidings that has protection from a non-zero number of creatures in a format where toughness matters a lot and will eat those other creatures that just become party pinatas for your opponent to slowly turn into cards for themselves. And that sort of card disadvantage or card advantage goes against what you're saying, where it's like you don't have that advantage to win the game. And trying to balance the core of the identity of trying to leverage your opponent's mistakes, missteps, creating those missteps and mistakes for your opponents, and trying to push them into the ground and keep them there so you can win the game is been a difficult balance, but a rewarding one. I think it's a very skill testing format.
For sure. I think, I think it's interesting that Yawgmoth is, he seems to, he can't be contested by the colors that are his allies. That's pretty nail on the head there for Wizards.
Yeah.
No, that's so. Where do you think, other than Yawgmoth, what do you think are some of like the biggest shifts or like the biggest lesson that you like took away from, I guess, like as from creating the cube now, like making your final tweaks, as we approach CubeCon, and all of us traveling to the lovely city of Madison.
It's going to be a great time. I think the biggest feedback was actually that I need to take feedback of other people more seriously. Like, even though I have this concept of drums, I bake it into the primer, I think about with every card choice I give, hearing other people's experiences and feedback and just wisdom, right? So like, I went to MXP and Chad from Salt and Pauper was like, we have a sorting algorithm, I think about all these cards that go in. It was really instrumental in teaching me like, here are the things that your cube does not have that people expect, or they make your cube better in ways that you should be doing as a cube designer.
Yeah.
And having to really take a step back and be like, wow, the experience I'm giving people isn't working or resonating in the way I think.
Yeah.
Or the idea that it is just Jun soup when people are expecting a curated meal.
Yeah.
Is a difficult thing that I've had to take in, because it's just shown to me that the lessons of cube design that are out there for many people to, listen, that archetypes, color balance, what your finishers are, and the experiences that your players have are really important.
Yeah.
And just being more open to that experience and feedback, I think is the biggest lesson I could do. Because even if you think you know how to build a cube, you're going to learn a lot from the experiences of players. And soliciting feedback is a big part of that, right? You have a responsibility that if someone doesn't have a good time, to hear why they didn't have a good time and act on that feedback.
So, what are some favorite cubes of yours that you've done that aren't yours? Like what are cubes that you enjoy?
So my favorite color pair is actually Orzhov.
Okay.
And at the CubeCon, the last one I went to, Medicant, I think is his name, he had a dichotomy cube.
Okay.
And this was my favorite for a number of reasons, because it was all white and black cards, but all of the white cards were in white sleeves, and all of the black cards were in black sleeves. And when you were drafting, I could see if you took a white card and the person to my left took a black card, I knew where I was sitting.
Yeah.
And it's not, everyone's cup of tea, and there were cool things in there, and there were some also old cards that why would you play, but it just really shattered any notion I had about what Cube should be. And I think had the biggest impact on me, because it really challenged my expectations about what's possible with Cube.
Yeah.
And that was really great, because there were no black and white cards. There were black cards and there were white cards. Another favorite cube of mine has to be Aqua's vintage cube. I know that is continuing to be called like the Cube Louvre that people said, and I got to play against it, and it was a joy. It was a pleasure, but also I thought my deck was really good, and I got pretty schooled, even though I had I had 6 mocks.
Talk about having fun losing.
Yes.
I mean, no one in the Cube community can provide a better experience for losing than drafting Aqua's Cube.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, I get to touch these magic cards. This is cool. There's life totals, fine, whatever. Like this is like
Yeah. I think that cube and Good Luck Have Fun's old border foil cube were the first cube where I had to like lean into dissociating myself from the cards at the table.
Yeah.
And every so often you pick up a pack and just go, like visibly feel a reaction to it.
Yeah. I have not. I met Jeff in Minneapolis, but I have not done his cube.
Yeah.
And I told him, I was like, your cube is like one that I'm very much looking forward to drafting at CubeCon, because it's like, one, it's just a legendary cube.
Mm-hmm.
Two, it's very pretty.
Yeah.
I hope that you get to do. I hope that you eventually get to do Zach's Cascade Cube.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
As a John and then the Laura Block aficionado,
Yes.
I'll say it's an awesome experience, and you'll appreciate, like, only people that played in the Laura Block will appreciate how good the border posts are in the Cascade Cube. That's like an inside, like from because like your border posts are like turn 1 Cascade for 3.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in that cube, that's really strong. So like so border posts are very high picks in the cube, and to see a card that would never be in any cube.
Yeah.
I mean, rare, unless you had like some weird like colorless cube that like wanted color. I don't know. I've not done Dan's Devoid Cube, but I don't think that there's any color identity in there, so he would not have any reason.
Slivdrazi Monstrosities
Okay.
is only colorless when it's in play, I think. But
Fair enough.
yeah.
So there are people like I think Scott, who's a New York guy, has like Curio Cube as like an artifact kind of themed cube. I don't know if that has border posts in it, but for me as a person who's fond of Laura, to know that border posts are like near the top of the pick order is just warms my heart so much that like.
I mean, if they didn't have Cascade, returning a land to your hand is a pretty big cost, but it's wonderful how Cube can recontext those old cards and have a cycle of them, right?
Yeah.
If you see a cool thing in Commander, you're looking for like 1 or 2 cards, but to have an entire cycle of forgotten draft commons that were used for mana fixing because they needed every card in the set to be gold, so they needed to find a way for it to make mana be gold and have some sort of drawback so you weren't just playing 5 colors.
It's just so. All right, now I'm gonna get a little nostalgic. So just in the, like, what was your favorite card in the Laura Block?
Blood Cultist.
Top 3.
Blood Cultist.
Top 3 cards. Blood Cultist.
Blood Cultist, because I love scaling. I love pinging things. Fire Blast Dragon, because it was the card that you just wanted to open.
Yeah.
In the Lara Block.
Yeah.
Okay, well then it's got to be the one close to my heart is Maelstrom Pulse, but I got to give number 3 to Ethersworn Adjudicator, the 4/4 flyer that mortifies on a stick and you can untap it, because I just always wanted to be able to untap with that guy, kill a thing, untap it, kill a thing, untap it.
That's awesome.
How about you? You got top 3 of Lara Block?
I think like number 3 is probably the it was the blue-black Bloodbraid Elf. The blue-black
Cathari Remnant?
Yes.
Yes.
I love
the
that.
The 0/1
card.
with regenerate for a black
It
that
was
flies.
a flyer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cathari Remnant. And then I think it's number 2 and 1 are very close. And it's between Woolly Thoktar and Spellbreaker Behemoth. But I think Spellbreaker Behemoth is number 2. And Woolly Thoktar is number 1.
Yeah.
And I loved cascading off of a Bloodbraid Elf into a Woolly Thoktar, which was far less popular than Bloodbraid Elf into Blightning.
That is true.
But
you know, Woolly Thoktar, some people think it's vanilla, but it actually has text on it.
It has
a lot of text.
Some of the best flavor text, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, very, very near and dear to my heart, the flavor text of Woolly Thoktar. And I don't know it by heart. I don't know it by memorization, but I know that it involves the people being so afraid of the Woolly Thoktar that they have to bring him treats at night so that when he wakes up, he just wakes up to food so he doesn't go to the village and like murder everything. So yeah,
it's very Machiavellian, feared and loved at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said the art is like just like this massive beast just curled up adorably, like asleep.
Yeah.
And it's it's great. It's great. And Spellbreaker Behemoth, I mean, I feel like there are many formats where that card would just be broken. I mean, just 4 mana 5/5, right? Is it 5/4 or 5/5?
I believe it's
this
I think it's a 5/5, and it just goes to show how a 5/5 is not good enough.
Yeah, it's not good enough, and I think it can't be countered, which was like okay because the fairy menace, right?
Yeah.
But then John destroyed fairies.
Yes.
So then, like.
Well, okay. As good as
it was
just Volcanic Fallout destroyed fairies.
Yes.
Or tried to.
Yes. Yeah. Fallout's a great card. Great card. I love that card. Oh man. So another thing I wanted to touch base on with you, which we've not talked about to this point, is that you actually qualified and played on the Pro Tour.
I did, and you'll love this. The deck I played was actually a Naya deck.
There we go.
I won a PTQ in 2013. We were grinding all the time to try and get points for Vegas, 2013 Vegas. And I had a deck that was 6 mana dorks, Voice of Resurgent, Domri Raid,
that's awesome.
Lockstone Smiter, Boros Reckoner, and I had played in a small event where someone had gone turn 3 Silverblade Paladin, turn 4 Exalted Archangel, or Sublime Archangel.
Okay, yeah.
And just killed people. And I threw some Thundermaw Hellkites in the mix, and that was a deck that tried to kill people.
There you go. Fantastic. That's cool, man. Going from grinding to casually enjoying Magic is like
being happy with a losing record at a competitive event like CubeCon.
yeah. So like, how what is that? What was that like for you transitioning, or like how was the journey from like? Because I think for me at least, right, it resonates a lot with having a love for the game and pursuing it competitively and loving it from that angle, but then like re-falling in love with the game from like we can just play and have fun and this can be cool. Like there's how did that like? What was that?
Yeah, I think the through line for me is actually the competitive REL changes around triggers. Okay. So when I started playing competitive Magic, you were not responsible for your opponent's triggers, right? And it was just at a time where some big rules changes were happening, and it was really weird because it was the time of competitive Magic where it was happening so much. You had strange interactions like the Borborygmos Pithing Needle, and Magic players in the competitive scene are kind of in this détente with empathy and understanding what their opponent is doing, right? You don't want to help your opponent, but also you want to make sure you don't make a mistake. Yeah. And the best way to do that is to make sure you don't miss any triggers. And that was the thing our group really drilled on, is we try to remember every single trigger and help your guy be like, you missed that, let's go back and like do this. And after I stopped playing competitively, because it was just not, for me, I had gone to the Pro Tour and I was like, nah, this is not it. Yeah. Reverting back to that, almost like a trigger referee, being like, oh, you missed that. Oh, here's this. And it kept me staying in the game and thinking about it on a different level, but in a much more helpful way. Yeah. Right? And like trying to help people out. And some people are like, hey man, like don't tell me my, triggers. And I'm like, sure, no problem. But it helped me find ways to play complex decks that I cared about. And once I started playing Arena, I was just like, oh, now that I play in paper, the way I frame it is like, I'll just play it as if we're playing on Arena. Yeah. On Arena, triggers happen, you see them, you can order them and think about them. Like, sure, you still make mistakes. Yeah. But now when I play, I try to help my opponent remember everything they're doing. I don't expect them to do the same for me. But I find a lot of joy in that sort of maintaining game state and flow level with the game that makes me a lot more engaged in the game, and I'm caring about game pieces, and I'm not trying as much to take care of my own emotions, and I find a lot more peace in playing a good game of Magic, even if I'm losing.
Yeah.
As long as we're both aware of what's going on. I'm not trying to remember everything I'm doing and smiling smugly at everything you're not. Just having a game as though we were playing digitally.
Yeah.
And finding joy in that, and being okay with that, being like, that's how I find joy now, I'm playing Magic.
Yeah, yeah.
Also probably why I make a cube with lots of activated abilities and triggers.
Fair enough. But you gotta, that's the thing, I think with cube design, which I know, as much as I love cube, I am not a cube designer by any stretch of the imagination, but what I have fun with when I design cubes is that balance of trying to bring yourself and also make the thing that you like appealing to other people. It's not like a commander deck which can be fully self-serving.
Yeah.
Right? In a cube, it can be fully self-serving.
Sure.
But you want it to be or at least it doesn't have to be this way, but an idea or a very common starting point for cubes is, here's what I like. I want to give the world the best version of that so that you can see what I think the pinnacle of what I enjoy is. And I think people that say I take it with a grain of salt and my cube is for you, sure, great, but
that's one thing that's been really actually freeing about making a junk cube, is just accepting that it's not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah.
If we sit down and some people are like, I'd rather not be forced to play black-red or something, it's that's totally fine.
Yeah.
And it's really been freeing in that to be like, I'm going to make an experience, and it might not be an experience everyone else likes, but if someone plays it and has a bad experience, I want them to let me know.
Yeah. That's I think that's very important to make sure that, like you said, you're getting the feedback and you're,
It is a little difficult to do in a cube where you're trying to literally grind your opponent into submission. There's a thin line between I didn't have fun and this was miserable, and also I kind of got crushed.
Yeah, well, this past weekend in Baltimore, I lost. This was not in cube, but I lost to Mind Twist. I lost to Swamp Go, Swamp, Dark Grit, Soul Ring, Mind Twist. And it's I love Mind Twist, but that game was not fun. But my opponent had a blast. And I know that even though that stunk for me, this is a great but also there's a great argument for Mind Twist is one of the worst Magic cards ever made and should never be played ever. And it's anti-fun. And if somebody would, I would not look somebody in the face and tell you that Mind Twist is objectively a fun Magic card. I will say subjectively, I very much enjoy Mind Twist. And I also understand that when I'm getting Mind Twisted and I am not playing Magic any longer, that I have to accept that this is what I've asked for. This is what
physically and emotionally let go of your resources.
Exactly. Here are my cards. We can just shuffle now. So I think it's about, and I think it's awesome that that you've done the Jun Cube, and I think that I'm excited to play it eventually. And I'm excited to get to hear the feedback that people have for it at CubeCon, because I think that's the pinnacle of the gamut there.
Yeah, and I think if you at home are trying to get your cube featured, they had a ton of entrants this year. You gotta start from that baseline of something you know really well, and be willing to cultivate an experience that and you bring to people, and you're willing to get feedback on it, and sort of wax poetic about it, and have a ability to put on your designer hat and think about card interactions and be mindful about how the format you cultivate ripples out with many iterations and how things change, because you're not building a cube for one night, you're building a cube for as long as you put effort into it. It's a passion project.
Definitely. Do you have any shout outs or anything you want to talk about before we head out?
Sure. I gotta give a shout out to my friend Andrew McDonald, who's out there, that I met at CubeCon.
Okay.
He made a Mardu cube.
Okay.
And we collaborate a lot about cards we think are good, similar color restricted. Unfortunately, he did not get selected in the color shifter bracket. The Selesnya cube won.
Okay.
Class act, that guy is really great. I don't know his name, unfortunately, but Andrew and I are putting on a Jund versus Mardu team draft.
Oh, all right.
In California.
Nice.
So that's going to be good. Shout out to him.
Yeah.
And shout out to my mom for beating my ass so hard with armadillo cloaks that it made me want to do that to other people.
That's a fantastic Magic story. So it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming down.
Yeah.
Making your way to Delaware to hang out with the Cube heads, and I can't wait to play the Cube, man.
Yeah.
I look forward to it.
I look forward to it too. Yeah. Get Junded out.
It would be my pleasure.
Enter the Junded Dome, right?
Tons of fun, man. Yeah. Tons of fun. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Right. We did it.